And therefore, the free trade agreement between your country and the European Union could, I'm not sure if it will be, but could be an enormous contribution for improvement of the daily life conditions. Why? You know, as I know, we are not longer living alone, you in Colombia and I in Germany, or the French in France, or the Brits, the English and Scottish and Irish in Northern Irish in the United Kingdom, or the Swedish in Sweden. No, we are living in a global village. What's happening here is in the moment it happens, a news in other parts of the world. What is happening there is in the moment a news here, affecting our daily life here and elsewhere in the world. I presume that my Twitter people, Twitter in the moment, Schulz was decorated with the Orden del Merito in Bogota, so that my fellow citizens in my city, where I was mayor, know and ask, and what is he doing now in Bogota? We are living in a global village, but we are not only living in a global village of worldwide networks, of media, we are also living in a global village of worldwide networks in economy, in trade. And whatever is happening in the frame of trade and economic development on the international financial markets, on the stock exchanges, on which is concerning the currency relations, the speculation, wherever in the world is affecting you like us. How to improve our cooperation to make it effective that trade in the 21st century, and I'm deeply convinced that trade in the 21st century will be the basis of the economy. Because if it is true that we are living in a global village, if it is true that transport plays no longer a role, transport of goods or services, if it is true that a lot of commerce already today is done by these worldwide networks, if this is true, and in my eyes it is true, then we have enormous risks, but we have also enormous chances, because then our markets, which were in previous times closed, the European market for goods from Colombia, your market for goods from Europe. But if it is possible to overcome the obstacles, to abolish the obstacles, because we haven't longer such obstacles, or we shouldn't have, then agreements about free trade, not only between the European Union and Colombia, between the European and other regions in the world. And Latin America as a whole is a world region. And you, I think, in your speech said really justified Colombia could be a laboratory for this model in Latin America. Then a free trade agreement is an enormous chance to create growth, and via growth, jobs. Safe jobs, not a job of 8 hours, 12 hours, 13 hours with $5 a day. No, jobs appropriated to your education, appropriated to your quality, to your skills, as a basis that you one day can marry and found a family and have children, which you send one day to a university, that they are educated and skilled in a world which is becoming every day more interdependent. Therefore, I invested a lot of time in this free trade agreement between the European Union and Colombia. Because I think for most of the Colombians, foreign investments of the European Union here in the energy sector, for example, or in agriculture, or in mining, can create jobs here. And in a free trade agreement, we just adopted in the European Parliament the rule, our enterprises investing money here in this country must respect fundamental rules. They cannot come to Colombia saying, the Colombians, they get less money. In Colombia, I have not to respect the fundamental labor rights standards. I have not to respect the environment standards. No. A free trade agreement means not that Europeans easier come to your country and exploit people here. Free trade agreement means it is easier for Europeans to invest here, but we, the Europeans, ask from our enterprises, those who invest in Colombia, have to respect the same standards they have to respect in Europe. And for the enterprises of Colombia, access to the European market is access to the richest market of the world. 500 million people with the highest average of income per capita. This is an enormous mutual chance, but only if we understand that it is a chance. In the last 2 days, yesterday, and when I was in Costa Rica the day before yesterday, and Monday and Tuesday I was in Mexico, I discussed with students in Mexico City the same item. And people are always putting a lot of questions, skeptical ones. I understand them. But my conclusion after 40 years in political life is if you only look to risks, you will never achieve. The fundamental basis for success is optimism and trust. And therefore, I think the advice we should give to parliamentarians here in the parliament in Bogota is, yes, discuss about the risks, discuss about the obstacles, but please not only discuss, please also about the enormous chances. I tried to describe some of the chances. Whatever will happen in the world, what we need in your country more than a lot of other countries is peace and social justice. And here in Colombia, I must say, peace and social justice are two sides of the same medal. A country with enormous social imbalances has more difficulties to create internally peace than a country with a fair and just society. Therefore, the improvement of the life conditions, especially of ordinary and poorer people, is a contribution to more internal coherence and stability. And also, therefore, a free trade agreement could be a contribution. To conclude, I'm not at least here because I think that the Europeans make since 40 years an enormous, 50 years an enormous mistake. Transatlantic relationship is for most of the Europeans relationship with the United States of America. But the American continent is more than the United States. The American continent is especially Latin America. The enormous economic potential, the enormous ecologic responsibility, the enormous cultural heritage of the Latin American continent. The fact that most of the Latin American countries have constitutions on the basis of the same values we share as Europeans with you should normally lead to the conclusion that the Europeans should look at least as much to Latin America as they look to the United States of America. I said some years ago to Ambassador Holmes Trujillo, imagine that the 27 member states of the European Union, plus all the democratic countries of Latin America, would build together a bloc in the United Nations, a bloc of democracies, or in the International Monetary Fund, or in the World Bank. I'm sure we could change the world in another direction. Therefore, for me, and that's the reason why I'm here, our economic relationship and connected to our economic relationship, our political cooperation is in my eyes a cornerstone for Europe and for Latin America in the 21st century, which should be a century for you, ladies and gentlemen, students here, and that's what I wish from the bottom of my heart, a century of peace. My father was born 1912 in Germany. As a child, he suffered the First World War. As a young man, he was a soldier in the German army in the Second World War. My mother married my father in 1940, The day of their marriage, my father had to leave because he was sent to the front in France. And he came back 1943, after 3 years, for the first time. And then he was sent to Russia. And when he got back, so his life, 1946, he had a boy of 2 years he had never seen, and with whom my mother was in a cave below a destroyed house. This is a normal, it's not exceptional, this is a normal European story. There are millions and millions of families with the same experiences, the same past. We in Europe, we achieved to overcome hate, to overcome war, terrorism, and this will of extermination of those who, from which kind of reason ever, racial reasons, religious reasons, national reasons, do want to see alive on the earth. That was the message of Adolf Hitler. We achieved to overcome all this by our integration in Europe, that countries and nations across borders build common institutions or common agreements to improve the daily life, to build trust to each other, and let's be honest, to control also each other. That is the big success of Europe in the 20th century. I'm absolutely sure we can't transfer this European model to Latin America. Latin America has specific conditions as Europe has specific conditions. But what we can conclude from our experiences, peace is possible if reconciliation is possible. And if peace via reconciliation is possible, then you have the best basis for social cohesion, stability, and welfare, especially for ordinary citizens. Thank you very much.